14 February 2023, and today we continue looking at the Zimbabwe 2023 elections, which are going to be held sometimes at the end of July and beginning of August. So we've got a few months to go before the elections. Today we want to look at why the campaign by ZANU-PF candidate, President Mnangagwa, is not being effective. So Nelson Chamisa of the CCC is having a more effective campaign, which is easy to sell compared to the campaign by President Mnangagwa. So I want to briefly explain what I mean by that. And what I mean specifically is that when you look at Chamisa's campaign, it's more visible, it's easier to identify with, and it's got a clear purpose and direction. So Chamisa's campaign is, the slogan is Ngapinde Ake Mkomana, Ngangene Ujaha. That is the sort of like their battle cry for Chamisa. Wherever you go all over Zimbabwe, it's clear. Shandukum Zimbabwe, change all over Zimbabwe. On the other hand, if you look at President Mnangagwa, his campaign is based on the 4ED groupings. So you've got teachers for ED, women for ED, and so forth. These are groupings that have sprung up in support of President Mnangagwa. So it's my belief that the strategy that President Mnangagwa's team is using is not correct, is ineffective, because they are not understanding what is on the ground. So the 4ED groups, their intention is to try to capture certain sections of the society. For example, wide sections of the society like teachers and police and apostoli and single mothers and pastors and people in churches and so forth. So this strategy does not work and is not effective because President Mnangagwa is the incumbent. Chamisa can get away with an aspirational campaign where he says, I'll deliver change. That's all. That's all that Chamisa needs to do. I'll deliver change. Look at how bad the situation is. President Mnangagwa cannot get away with the same kind of campaign. So he cannot get away with the same kind of campaign where he says, Vision 2030, I'm going to do such and such, or we're going to do this and that, because he's the incumbent. What President Mnangagwa needs to do is to ditch the current campaign strategy. I'm not saying he must ditch the 4ED groups totally. They're already there, so it's difficult to get out of them. But given that we've got 6 months to go to the election, it's gonna be necessary for President Mnangagwa to make a drastic change in his campaign strategy. And as I said, there are two portions that needs to be addressed. You cannot deal with the issue of President Mnangagwa's image the same way that you are dealing with Chamisa is dealing with his image. So Chamisa is using his charismatic brand identity to sell himself. He's not doing anything else. He's just being Chamisa. Chamisa is popular with the young people. He's popular with people in the cities. So he's campaigning on the necessary platforms that he's using, which is the WhatsApp, the Facebook, the YouTube and Twitter. That is Chamisa's home ground. So that is one thing. President Mnangagwa cannot claim that space from Chamisa. There is no way that you can convince me that President Mnangagwa can claim Twitter or WhatsApp or Facebook from Chamisa. That is not possible. From the terms of a platform, Chamisa has got a higher ground. So I see the ZANU-PF guys trying to claim the higher ground from Chamisa. That is not where they are strong. So that's the first thing that I want to mention. From a platform perspective, they cannot claim support from Chamisa by just going and bombarding Twitter or Facebook or bringing countless people from different countries into Zimbabwe to try to show up the image of Zimbabwe or of President Mnangagwa. That will not work. It's not effective. Then secondly, as I said, they cannot work on the image of President Mnangagwa and try to sell President Mnangagwa on his image or on his personality, or that's not going to work. You cannot compare with Chamisa, whose only claim right now is that when he comes in, he's going to change things. Chamisa is not in power. He's not in office. But he's got a serious following where if Chamisa was to stand on a stage and say, Shando come Zimbabwe, everyone would just go crazy. That is how it works. That is his strength. And if a picture of Chamisa with a message was to be put on a WhatsApp group, it will be sent all over the place and everyone is going to see it. So Chamisa's strength comes from his platform, he's on social media to the young people in the cities and all over the world, and also on his brand identity. He's very, very strong when it comes to brand identity. So the ZANU-PF guys must listen to me very, very carefully. If you want to win an election, and I know that ZANU-PF is very good at winning elections, but this time it's different. So I want them to understand. This time, the election that we're going into is the most different election that ZANU-PF has ever contested. Everything that ZANU-PF has used in the past, including the military, TV stations, radio stations, it's not going to work. They need a new strategy. And I am going to bring my proposal in this video of what they need to do. So, firstly, they need to treat this situation like an emergency. That is what they need to do. President Mnangagwa's campaign team, they need to understand where they are. They're in a very tight corner. So they need to treat this current situation in this election as an emergency. And what do you do when you've got an emergency or a crisis? You respond. But you don't respond with words. You're going to respond with change. You need to make a change. So President Mnangagwa, the change that people were looking forward to in the past 5 or 6 years, he's going to have to deliver it within the next 6 months. And I want to touch on the 2 or 3 critical areas that are important to everyone in Zimbabwe. So where President Mnangagwa has not done well is 2 areas. The first is creation of opportunity. Right. So that is the first thing. The second thing is transforming the economy. So let me start with transforming the economy. You know that there's no money, there's no cash in the banks. The Zimbabwe dollar is weak. Inflation is very high. And the prices are going up. And then, as I said, there's no cash in the ATM. So, as an emergency, that needs to be addressed first. And you can easily do it in 6 months. What happens after the 6 months can be something else. But the first thing that President Mnangagwa would need to do in this current circumstance is to eliminate the problem, which is currently the Zimbabwe dollar or the bond notes or the ZWL. That is a very, very big problem. So if I was in President Mnangagwa's camp, what I would do, I would have to address the current issues in a sort of like with emergency measures. There is no other way President Mnangagwa is going to win without taking drastic action. And the drastic action I'm talking about here. Firstly, get rid of the Zimbabwe dollar. That is a drastic measure. You need to dollarize totally in Zimbabwe. And I know this is going to be very, very difficult, a very difficult decision to take. But at the moment where we are standing, I just sent money to Zimbabwe today. Econet is converting $100. I sent $50 and it was at $8.50. That's a very high rate. There's no need to continue with the Zimbabwe dollar where it is, where it's devaluing, the way it is devaluing. So, as an emergency measure, if I was President Mnangagwa right now, going into this election, I would totally dollarize, peg every price in Zimbabwe in US dollars, and only use the Zimbabwe dollar for change or for minor transactions. But the main currency in Zimbabwe becomes the dollar, the rand, the pula, the Chinese yuan, or all these other currencies. But you peg in Zimbabwe dollars. You want to stabilize the prices. Then I want people to be able to withdraw dollars on the ATM. This has happened before. People should be able to withdraw dollars in the ATM. This can be done. Once you dollarize, you eliminate all these other problems. So that is the first thing. Then you need to go to opportunity. President Mnangagwa has promised a lot of times to provide opportunities to the youths, to people in the cities, to people in the villages. As an emergency measure, what these guys need to do, firstly in the cities, they had said at ZANU-PF that they're going to roll out land allocations in 10 provinces. And I know this because I went to Zimbabwe when we were looking for land, and we approached the ZANU-PF guys and said, you guys said you are going to allocate land in 10 provinces to women and youths. And that was never done. I don't know what happened. President Mnangagwa said he was going to identify farms. This project will need to happen. And I'm not talking lip service here. I'm talking about providing and allocating land to youths and giving them title deeds or some form of title in all the provinces, and including residential stands, which are right now in the cities. Provide some form of title, make sure that it happens. That has not happened over the past 4 or 5 years. Land is lying fallow. Around Harare, if you drive just 50 or 60 kilometers from Harare, land is lying fallow. There is so much disorder in the allocation of land. I talked to the guys, the Minister of Lands when I was in Zimbabwe, and urban housing. And I was saying to them, the level of disorder that is there in land allocation is such that everywhere you look, it's almost as if the shanty towns and the informal settlements are swallowing the proper settlements. So this is an area that needs to be addressed. And as I said, opportunity needs to be opened up. Young people need to be given these opportunities. In mining, there is a lot of opportunities there, but it's not happening. Funding, there's been no funding schemes provided in Zimbabwe where youth can obtain cash, and especially if you dollarize. So what is the point I'm making here? The point I'm making is that the campaign of President Mnangagwa cannot be based on words or image or photoshopped images. It has to be an emergency program. This has to be an emergency program to win this election, because you are competing against an ideal situation, and you are going against that very person who's giving you an ideal situation with words, whereas you are incumbent. You've got the ability to change the situation that is there on the ground. So hence I say it is not currently an effective strategy that President Mnangagwa is proposing. Standing on a stage this time is not going to work. And I hope that the guys in ZANU-PF are able and willing to do what is necessary. This is the strategy that I would give to ZANU-PF and President Mnangagwa if they want to win this election their campaign cannot be business as usual. There needs to be such a change in Zimbabwe that when someone walks in 3 months' time, they say this country is different. The way it looks right now, when you walk around in Harare, there must be a cleanup there. There must be something that has changed. And this is where President Mnangagwa has a difficult task, because this campaign cannot be just the normal campaign. It has to be very, very different and very, very powerful. And it must be transformative. It must transform what we're seeing and what we're looking at. Those are my words for today. And as I said, President Mnangagwa has begun his campaign. I think they have got miners or small-scale miners for ED this weekend. I'll check and confirm. But there is a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done. And this needs everyone in ZANU-PF to put their heads together. That is my contribution to this topic tonight. Good night, and thank you very much.